2020 is slipping through everyone's fingers and nobody has any bloody clue when things will be back to normal again. Some may point to the ongoing global bastard, the lack of live crowds, and the general weirdness of the year thus far, but not everyone can hide behind such excuses for some of the outright awfulness fouling company programming. For every sweeping and merited Drew McIntyre world title win, emotional comeback from Edge, and sudden retirement from The Undertaker, which definitely isn't a work, there have been at least a handful of stinkers polluting WWE cards. Those stinkers are the worst on the roster right now. Contributing next to nothing, they're either to blame personally or WWE Creative needs a firm talking to. With that in mind, I'm Adam Wilborn from What Culture, and these are the 10 worst WWE wrestlers of 2020 so far. Number 10, the Viking Raiders. What the hell happened to War Machine? Before reaching WWE, this tag team were fierce. They were earning rave reviews for their work in Japan, ROH, and WCPW, of course, and then some of WWE's writers got their hands on the duo, gave them names that sounded like IKEA call center workers, and put them in stupid bloody comedy skits. The Street Profits get a pass here despite sharing these segments with the Viking Raiders, because Montez Ford and Angelo Dawkins have a comedic edge to them anyway, but Eric and Ivar should be snorting Norse warriors, tearing shit up like some modern day retelling of the Road Warriors. Instead, they're bowling and playing golf. Golf! 2020 hasn't been kind to these Raiders. WWE has stripped them of all menace and tried to half-arse their way through scenes that maybe would have worked on primetime wrestling in 1992 or even one of those old Coliseum home videotapes. Number 9, Gronk. Wrestling old-timers will tell you Savio Vega's early ninja gimmick was the punchline to a joke that went something like, "What's the sound of 300 pounds of shit hitting the fan? Whang!" Today, that could be easily changed to Gronk as a more pop culture savvy replacement. Just ask WWE. They thought they'd pulled off quite the coup by signing ex-NFL badass Rob Gronkowski. His jump from gridiron to squared circle could have worked too, but then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers came calling and offered Rob the chance to hook up with his good old pal, Tom Brady. Suddenly, WWE life wasn't so appealing. So why is Gronkowski barely here if he didn't wrestle properly? Well, technically he did. Gronk won the 24/7 title at WrestleMania 36 of all places by pinning his pal Mojo Rawley. Then he dropped the belt to R-Truth and dipped out of the WWE spotlight back into football. Oh, and let's not forget that sodding dance. Number 8, R-Truth. In fairness, his run of hijinks with the 24/7 title has produced some worthwhile laughs over the past year or so. Truth was also the perfect guy for WWE to place in this role, but it's long past tired comedy by now and needs a bit of a rest. The guy has had, at time of recording, 37 title reigns with the joke belt. Sake. This year, WWE has experimented with R-Truth outside of the 24/7 gimmick too, and it hasn't been great. His gauntlet sprint at Super Showdown, where he beat Bobby Lashley, Andrade, and Eric Rowan before succumbing to AJ Styles, is the kind of thing you'd expect to see on house shows, not pay-per-view. Number 7, Carmella. Truth's old running buddy Carmella hasn't been faring much better this year either. In 2020, she's so far removed from the essential heel character she played several years ago that it's ridiculous. Back then, Mella was in featured storylines and sniffing around the SmackDown Women's title. Today, she's Dana Bloody Brooke 2.0. She was blatantly cannon fodder for Bayley in February and then formed a tag team with fellow no-hoper Brooke to challenge for the women's tag team belts. That didn't waken Carmella from her slumber, and fans have been conditioned to view her as one of those jobber to the stars type of workers. Decent to plug a gap, but not someone to take seriously full-time. It's frightening to think that Mella is less important to the WWE product now she's not riding on R-Truth's back and helping him ward off potential 24/7 title challenges. Carmella desperately needs a heel turn to restore some interest. Number 6, Mojo Rawley. Christ knows how WWE restore interest in Mojo, though. His mirror-staring character went nowhere, and so did his run as Rob Gronkowski's jocular mate. Mojo is still the kind of worker announcers pretend has limitless potential. If only he could fit all the pieces of the pro wrestling puzzle together, they cry. Rawley could be world champ. Yeah, that ain't gonna happen unless things dramatically change. The weird thing is that Rawley clearly has charisma and he's hardly terrible in ring. Everything he's cast to do is just so dull though. Mojo is going nowhere at the moment, lacks that marketable gimmick he can lean back on, and doesn't have many chances left. Number 5, Ridley Moss. Is Ridley Moss about to be repackaged? Do WWE see anything in him at all? Is he currently rehabbing an injury? Who knows, because it's actually pretty hard to find anything out about the guy at all. He just kind of showed up, won the 24/7 title, and then buggered off again after a short alliance with Mojo Rawley. Oh, thrilling stuff. Moss must be wondering if all the hard work he's doing in the gym is worth it for such paltry scraps on WWE's roster. Being known as the most boring 24/7 champ in the belt's laughable history, Titus aside of course, is not something to be proud of, and Riddick's only hope is to totally reinvent himself or scuttle back to NXT, where he might be taken seriously again. His matches acted as a preview to the empty arena era, in the fact that they played to almost no noise even when WWE packed fans into buildings for Raw. The company has done nothing to portray him as exciting, and he's been forgotten about since March. Number 4, Ruby Riot. It's up for debate whether fans remember every single win and loss long term, but poor Ruby has yet to bag one televised victory in 2020 since returning in February. Her feud with old stalemate Liv Morgan didn't lead to much, and Riot has been staring at the lights in short matches for Asuka, Kairi Sane, Charlotte Flair, and Bianca Belair since. Her most recent role as Belair's punching bag on Main Event is hardly a lofty spot or a sure sign that things will get better. Ruby is still only 29 years old though, so there's hope she'll stumble into a role that works eventually, but personally, I've kind of given up. Number 3, Braun Strowman. Whatever happened to Mr. Get These Hands? His runs as Intercontinental and Universal Champion were/have been pitiful in terms of match quality, and the occasional fun-loving giant gig creative give him is like pulling teeth. Braun hasn't been booked correctly since he was a rampaging monster feuding with Roman Reigns, and that was 3 years ago now. Playing the sometimes physically dominant / sometimes gentle smiley babyface role hasn't suited Strowman at all. He sucks in 2020. Here is a guy who should be established as a killer monster by now. Instead, he's someone heels play practical jokes on. Number 2, Elias. One of the major problems blighting modern WWE is that heels are turned babyface without any clear direction because the company are so desperate to create new stars. That, unfortunately, ends up changing everything that caused fans to relate to them in the first place. Elias is the perfect example of this desperation. As a smart-arsed guitar-playing heel, Elias got some of the best reactions on the roster. That must have caught Vince McMahon's attention enough to think that he had a breakout babyface on his hands. 2020 has, much like the final few months of 2019, shown that the boss was wrong about that one. But when's he ever wrong? All of the time. He's wrong so often. Oh my god. Anyway, Eli couldn't have been less effective before tearing his pec and being benched by injury. His feud with King Corbin, a man many will think should be on this list, spoiler, he isn't, was interminable. There's just a real lack of the same wit to Elias' songs these days too. He was approximately 1,000,000 times better when he was ripping the piss out of fans and WWE's babyfaces. Number 1, Naya Jax. If anyone does think that Corbin deserved to be here instead of Naya Jax, then just watch any of Naya's matches since returning in April. Say what you want about the King, but at least he's competent enough that he doesn't regularly botch spots or, worse, physically hurt the people he's working with. Jax can't say the same. Her reckless behavior around Kairi Sane on the 1st of June episode of Raw was one such incident, and it has everyone questioning whether or not Jax is safe to work with. This follows her earlier buckle bomb on Sane from the 13th of April edition that looked absolutely horrendous. And don't forget that Nia also socked Becky Lynch in the eye in 2018 too. Nia looks strangely uncoordinated in the ring. Has that always been the case? Well, not quite. She did have some fun matches in NXT with the likes of Asuka and Bayley, but any poise she had since then seems to have disappeared. Jax must be considered the least enjoyable worker to watch in WWE right now. And that's our list. Did we miss any out? Let us know in the comment section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to What Culture Wrestling wherever you get your podcasts from for daily wrestling podcasts. Thanks for watching. I've been Adam from What Culture. I'll see you soon.